Game of Thrones, even despite its magnificent fall from grace during the last couple of seasons, was a glorious interpretation of the effects of power upon the human psyche and society. It reckoned not simply with the human desire for power, but the ways in which we have always attempted to justify our pursuit of power. Now, George R. Martin could not have known that such a story would be a glaring example of the current issues we stand in the face of today. While his story was deeply rooted in a medieval history, complete with inspiration of prominent religions that have always impacted systems of power, he created a world in which the context of our own world was completely removed. Yet, the struggle of elitism and misogyny still exist, not because they are innate to the human experience, but because the thirst for human power remains, and therefore, oppression is inevitable. But what makes Game of Thrones so deeply impressive is how it holds a mirror to us, proving that the hallmarks of oppression as they exist for us now, the myth-making figures, socio-political cults, the exploitation of weapons of destruction to exert dominance over others, are related to one thing and one thing only: power. The ultimate thesis of Game of Thrones is not as simple as absolute power corrupts, but moreover, it is a mere illusion. It is meaningless, as the systems of power operate independently of whichever individual is in charge. And none is a clearer example of this than Daenerys Targaryen. Daenerys Targaryen grew up in exile in a completely different land, completely divorced from the world in which she was meant to be part of the ruling family, promised power, but denied. In order to reclaim it, Daenerys finds herself recreating the same systems of oppression that oppressed her to begin with. This began long before the mess of the last season that completely assassinated her character. So, for argument's sake, let's pretend like that never happened. Because what is far more compelling is the characterization of Daenerys in earlier seasons, depicting her ultimately as someone willing to do whatever it takes and to create and define her own rules. Someone whose definition of morality was whatever she said it was. And simply because she was a woman pursuing power in a world that did not want her to have it, she was considered to be a feminist icon. And a lot of people find that inspirational and something to look up to. When we meet Daenerys Targaryen in season 1, she is being forced to marry Khal Drogo, the leader of a powerful tribe, so that her brother may leverage the Dothraki army to take back the Iron Throne. She is incredibly young. She is just a teenager, and she's even younger in the book than in the TV version. She experiences a lot of physical and mental anguish, in addition to having already grown up, traumatized, and in exile. Still reeling from the overthrowing of their family, her brother wants nothing more than to wage war and reclaim what was taken from them. But we very quickly realize that her brother is in no position to do such a thing. We watch him terrorize Daenerys, who finally learns to stand up for herself. And eventually, she watches Khal Drogo give her own brother a horrible death. For the first time, we see what she is truly capable of, and it is far from the last time. At the end of that very season, when Khal Drogo gets injured in battle, she makes a deal with the woman who was a former slave and captured by the Dothraki. This new woman promises that she can bring Khal Drogo back. Daenerys is so desperate to get her husband back, especially because she's expecting a child now, that she makes the deal despite the warnings from her advisors and despite knowing that it would require dark magic. She's led to believe that it would only require the sacrifice of a horse, but instead, she ends up losing both Khal Drogo and her unborn child. He is the sacrifice that is done in order to commit the blood magic. When she ends up seeing Khal Drogo again after he is resurrected and after she realizes that she's lost her son, she sees him as a shell of his former self, and she asks the woman, when will he be as he was? When the woman responds,
When sun rises in the west, sets in the east. when the seas go dry, when the mountains blow in the wind like leaves.
Daenerys makes two incredible choices in this moment. She kills Khal Drogo herself to put him out of his misery, and she sentences this woman to a death by fire. She then enters into the fire herself, thereby completing her transformation from girl to woman and from Khaleesi to mother of dragons. This is a very powerful moment that represents how it was exactly her capacity to sacrifice her enemies that made her so worthy of and ready for power. After this, without even really having a discussion about it, she decides to pursue the Iron Throne. It simply is implied now that she has dragons. But had she not been blinded by her grief earlier, she may have stopped to recognize that she was not this woman's savior. Daenerys thought that she was helping this woman, that she had freed her from her torment, but in reality, she was the very representation of it. She was the wife of the man who had captured the slave. This woman was never going to help save the man who destroyed her people and defiled her virtue. In fact, she did to Daenerys what Daenerys did to her. She enacted her vengeance. Daenerys is not a sympathetic character. She is not better than the men who came before her. She too can act out in moments of grief and pain to do deeply horrible things that are justified in her mind as being the only right thing. Similar to her ancestor Rhaenyra from House of the Dragon, who fought the same fight to rule the Seven Realms as a woman centuries prior, she will do whatever it takes because she believes the ends will justify the means. Rhaenyra grew up knowing that as a woman, she had no legitimate claim to the throne simply because she was born a woman. And somehow, she still forgot this very important fact that her mother died trying to give her father a son when her father named her his heir. He could have done it at any point prior. He would not have needed to do so if she had been born a boy. Yet how quickly did Rhaenyra lose sight of this important reality the second she got just a taste of power. The scene in which she says to Rhaenys,
"They denied you, Princess Rhaenys, the queen who never was. But they bent the knee to me and called me heir to the throne."
Do you remind your father's men of that as you carry their cups?
Rhaenyra clearly thought that she was going to be the exception. This is in due part to the fact that she knew very little about the actual forces manipulating the world around her, no understanding of patriarchy and elitism, and thus no real chance to combat it. She, like Daenerys, was instead cursed with a longing to reclaim the power taken from her, and she became doomed to repeat the same mistakes. This ignorance of her reality is exactly why Rhaenyra blames Alicent so harshly for marrying her father, Viserys.
I intend to marry the Lady Alicent Hightower.
She does not blame Viserys, who is the adult, and the king. There is no one that Rhaenyra has ever met that has had more power than her father, and she does not blame Otto, who, if she has been paying attention at all, has immense power over Alicent. She blames Alicent, and as a child it makes sense. She expected loyalty from her best friend. She did not necessarily expect it from anyone else. She thought Alicent and what they had was different and special, but instead she has no understanding for Alicent, no empathy. And to be fair, Alicent has very little empathy for Rhaenyra too, and no understanding of why Rhaenyra would be upset that she has married her father, because from Alicent's perspective, she simply did what she had to do. But how can Rhaenyra understand that? She does not understand that Alicent was forced into this under a system of oppression in which she is simply a pawn for her father to wield power and for Viserys to have a chance at a legitimate heir. Rhaenyra can't understand why Alicent would do such a thing, because she can't understand what it would mean to be a powerless woman in this world. And when she loses her power at the end of the season, Symbolically, while she is giving birth, is when the coup occurs and Aegon takes the throne. She's genuinely shocked. So shocked that she not only very foolishly sends her sons away unguarded, as if they are not now at war and poor Luke never makes it back home, but she goes to speak to Alicent to gain clarity. When Alicent tells her how she misunderstood Viserys' final words, Rhaenyra mistakenly believes what has happened can simply be undone. But this was never about her and Alicent at all. This was never about what Viserys may have said in his final moments. This was going to happen regardless, because this was about the systems that enforce power. This was about the men around them seeking that power. Both of these women are no different than their enemies. They are only doing what everyone else is doing because they want what everyone else wants. Rhaenyra institutes a blockade against the people of King's Landing, causing them to starve and only ending it when it becomes beneficial for her. Daenerys calls herself the breaker of chains and goes around liberating all these people, but still, they find themselves following her. I wonder why that is. Because what everyone else wants is the product of and embedded within a system that is built on the oppression of women and also the poorer people of Westeros and Essos who are constantly exploited for the gain of those around them. They are essentially guaranteed to fail. There is no gaming the system that gains you. However, Daenerys has it in her head that she is a good person. In addition to being called the breaker of chains, she's called Mother, because she frees many in Essos from the tyrannical rulers.
Misa! Misa!
What does it mean? She's old Kiskadi, Khaleesi. It means mother.
This includes the Unsullied, who end up following her, grateful for her aid. But let's not forget that Daenerys only came in contact with them because she meant to buy them for her army. And now she has her army, so she basically got it for free. They argue it's different because they were given a choice, but what choice did they have? What resources did they have to live their own lives? Daenerys is still very much their master in just much shinier packaging. When Daenerys frees an entire land of slaves, she chooses to punish all of the slave masters very intensely by pinning them to crosses and leaving them up there to rot and die. What truly righteous person could retaliate against oppressors by employing exactly their tools?
Sometimes it is better to answer injustice with mercy.
I will answer injustice with justice.
But it's okay when these liberators do it because their intentions are better, or because they were once victims.
For that, he has my gratitude. I should be honored to meet him.
You have, Your Grace. You crucified him. I pray you'll never live to see a member of your family treated so cruelly.
Your father crucified innocent children.
My father spoke out against crucifying those children. He decried it as a criminal act, but was overruled. Is it justice to answer one crime with another?
I am sorry you no longer have a father, but my treatment of the masters was no crime. You'd be wise to remember that.
When it comes down to it, Daenerys is violent. She is dangerous. She listens to her own reason first and foremost. She did exactly that when she killed her former handmaid Dorea by locking her in a tomb for allegedly betraying her, when the poor girl had no choice. Daenerys must have wanted the girl to die for her. That is tyranny. But because she's a woman who has lost so much, everything that she does feels vindicated. And she deserves all of this because she was not born into it, but she was forced to fight for it. Daenerys and Rhaenyra have a deep entitlement to what they feel was theirs, for no other reason than growing up, they were either explicitly or inadvertently told that they deserved these things. They were told that this was their right, and it's exactly the same divine right to power that in the original medieval times on which Game of Thrones is heavily based, justified the existence of the monarchy at that time. The Catholic Church was very heavily involved in the monarchy, and the Catholic Church essentially said, in a lot of ways, that the particular family in power within the monarchy had the right to be there because God had chosen them. And with a lot of people at the time not having the ability to read or write or educate themselves, they simply had to accept what was told to them. And they also needed to have a religion to hold on to in order to feel better about the positions in which they were in. Meanwhile, the royals, who were probably in a position to make things better for them, were simply weaponizing religion in order to hide it behind their own accountability. In Game of Thrones, you have your own Catholic Church, the Faith of the Seven, which, when we are originally introduced to them in the Game of Thrones series, we see that the High Septa, the person who's in the position of power, who is essentially the Pope, he was completely under Cersei Lannister's control. It was a completely corrupt institution, and she was using him in order to fortify her own power. She had no care about the institution of faith that he was representing. And George R. Martin has acknowledged the real-life parallels.
The major religions that actually play a significant role in the story are somewhat based on real religions. So I did that, except I made it 7 instead of 3. I have the whole, well, we have 7 gods, we have 7 personas, so instead of Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, we have Maiden, Mother, Crone, which of course I took from paganism as the traditional female thing. I kind of hobbled the male side together, and then I added the stranger as the god of death.
There's also the Lord of the Light, which is another religion in Game of Thrones that is used to justify doing terrible things, including at one point the murder by fire of Princess Shireen, a little girl. And that is a religion based on a real-life religion that worships fire. It centers on the eternal struggle between light and dark, good and bad.
The army was strapped, the horses were dying. It was the only way.
You burned a little girl alive!
I only do what my lord commands.
If he commands you to burn children, your lord is evil.
This relates to Daenerys and Rhaenyra because this is the religion that, although neither of them are particularly religious, they use in order to understand their placement in this world. It is the religion that is used to justify their family's right to power. In this world, where they are the elites, they are in a position where they can define what is good and what is bad, and it is whatever is going to be convenient for them. Things are made right because essentially they said so. Rhaenyra deserves to be queen, not because she would be a better leader than her mother, although, in all honesty, she probably would, but because she was the one named heir to the throne.
Why should Team Black win?
Because it's my inheritance.
Daenerys, at least because she has lived a very difficult life, does have some sort of moral compass. She sees herself a bit in the people that she believes she's liberating. She believes that she's a good person, and so that's going to make her a better leader than everyone else. But similar to how religion is used to define morality, in alliance with the desires of the elites, Daenerys defines her own morals based on what she likes and does not like. It is more in accordance with ethics than some of her competitors for the throne, but she has essentially fashioned herself as a god. Targaryens were always seen as gods because of their dragons. The religion that worships fire? Dragons breathe fire. Daenerys believes that because she deserves power, anyone who wrongs her, even if it is poor Doreah who had no choice, deserves to suffer. Daenerys wants to be back on the Iron Throne. And then what? She's going to be the queen ruling all of these common folk and all of these peasants. Who essentially is she bringing with her to the top? No one. No one really gets to come. She possesses these innate beliefs that are fundamentally at odds with the system in which they live. This belief that she, as a woman, can be in a position of power. This is not a belief that can coexist in the realm of monarchy, because monarchy is a system of hierarchy that is predicated on the oppression of marginalized groups. That includes her. A monarchy will continue to be a monarchy even if a woman sits in a position of power, Cersei Lannister was just as vile and awful when she got to be queen as much of the men who came before her. It was not a feminist act, simply because she is a woman, because she did not give a damn about anyone but herself, least of all feminism. Daenerys never had the chance to understand all of this. She never had the opportunity to reimagine the tools to free herself of this struggle. She talks of breaking the wheel to create a new world, but how exactly was she going to do that? By employing the same exact tools and strategies as everyone else?
Lannister, Targaryen, Baratheon, Stark, Tyrell. They're all just spokes on a wheel. This one's on top, then that one's on top, and on it spins, crushing those on the ground.
It's a beautiful dream. Stopping the wheel. You're not the first person who's ever dreamt it.
I'm not going to stop the wheel. I'm going to break the wheel.
Because Daenerys never reckons with what constructs the Wheel of Power, as she calls it, she never comes close to her goal of breaking it. She lacks the education and knowledge of even her own history to truly gain the comprehension needed to dismantle it, highlighting the importance of such things. Exactly the same struggle that Rhaenyra had. This is why education, knowledge, comprehension is denied to those who are oppressed. They never gain the tools, the education, the what have you, to overcome their struggle. But Daenerys also cannot ethically engage in such a pursuit of power. The very act is doomed, because to want to have power in the monarchy is to want to dominate others. Daenerys' characters show that the only way to break the wheel is to break the system.
Rhaenyra! Tole grego votis! Grevi in noma pregelat!
And so anyone who claims to seek power by doing exactly what everyone else is doing has no means to change anything. Donald Trump had no plans to be different than any other politician, despite MAGA's insistence that he was different. He may be significantly less qualified and intelligent than other presidents and politicians, but he is no different. Zohar Mamdani, however, has built a campaign and run a campaign on being different than other politicians. In a recent interview, when asked how he feels about Kamala Harris potentially running again for the presidency, he says that he's not concerned with that.
I have to be honest, I haven't thought about the candidacies for president this time. My focus is 2026.
You're the only Democrat who hasn't thought about that.
And I'm proud to say that I am not and will never be running for president. And here in 2026, I want to be delivering for New Yorkers. And when it comes to the national level, I want to make sure that we win these midterms and actually have a vision that we're fighting for, not just one that we're fighting against.
Do you think she would be the strongest person to represent Democrats in 2028?
I know you're trying to get me to answer the previous question again. Trying. But I have to be honest with you. I think that New Yorkers are tired of politicians pontificating about other politicians. What they want to see are results. And that's why my focus has been more on potholes than on politics.
Since being in office, he has focused not on augmenting his social capital, but doing what he said he would do. And while he must still at times navigate certain bureaucratic red tape in order to maintain the majority support of the New York City public, he truly has been different. He doesn't want to pursue higher office because he only seeks as much power as is necessary to make meaningful change. Watching the dominoes tumble on the current administration is very similar to watching Game of Thrones, and we know why. Those who sacrifice their own morals in order to get into the president's good graces are now recognizing that the person who has always been the worst is in fact the worst. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tucker Carlson, Pam Bondi, many, many more have all fallen out with Trump and have come to realize that he was never going to live up to his end of the bargain, the risk that they all took of ingratiating themselves, not recognizing that this administration only rewards elite white men within it, and sometimes not even them did not pay off. Just like Rhaenyra and Daenerys, they failed in their endeavors to preserve a system that was designed to oppress most people. This is all to say, it's not surprising to watch the growing dissatisfaction with the current administration, as they prove to, in fact, be capable of what we have long been saying they are capable of. Just look at Caitlyn Jenner now crying that the anti-LGBT administration is anti-her too. I just cannot understand why they think they were going to be the exception. And it is a bit satisfying, albeit deeply annoying, because we told you so, to see people finally come to their senses and recognize that supporting ideologies that perpetuate white supremacy will not actually benefit them. In a sense, working class white people are just as expendable as working class people of color, especially if their beliefs no longer align with those in power. Ultimately, Game of Thrones warned us that this would happen. They warned us that power as a system is very formidable and cannot be overcome by penetrating the system. That would only further enforce it. If you made it this far, I really hope that you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like, comment, share, whatever floats your boat, and I will see you so soon. Bye.